Hello, this is WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley, and if you want to catch up on the latest in amateur and Olympic wrestling, there's only one podcast to listen to. Subscribe to Bashamania, the Bashamania podcast, and have a nice day. Yeah!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Bashmania podcast. This is episode 85, and I'm your host, Justin Bash. Today, we have our 6th Olympic gold medalist joining the podcast, as Kyle Snyder, World, Olympic, NCAA champion, joins the show. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Overcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure to subscribe to Bashamania. And if you enjoy this episode, be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts.
It's Bashamania! Let me tell you something, brother. He gave us everything he had in him tonight. What you gonna do when Bashamania runs wild? Oh, it's gonna be a good one. And business just picked up here on the podcast. Oh, yeah.
And we are here with Captain America, Kyle Snyder. How are you, man?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Of course. You know, like many wrestling fans around the world now, I'm fascinated by your career and your story. And also, as a Christian, your faith intrigues me because you can see it. And I'm going to touch on a couple things throughout that I've noticed, and I can't wait to try to see what kind of feedback you give. But let's start right back at the beginning. Tell me, you know, I know you grew up in Woodbine, Maryland. What got you started in wrestling?
The first two sports I played were wrestling and football. And I played football, you know, in the fall. I think I started playing football when I was 5 years old. And my dad's friends saw me play football, and they saw like that I was real aggressive and stuff. So they thought, so they thought that wrestling would be a good winter sport for me. And then my grandpa, he wrestled as well in high school and stuff. He's the only one in my family that wrestled before us. So, you know, he kind of pushed me into wrestling too a little bit. So it was a mixture of those two things that got me into it.
And were you good right away? I mean, it's obviously, you know, you didn't give up a single loss the first 3 years of high school, going 179-0, but you also only gave up one takedown. So you got good really quick. What was that ascension like to get to that point to where, hey, man, I'm pretty good at this thing?
I was always pretty good for my age and weight because I was always a bigger kid. Yeah. So when I would wrestle in like age, weight brackets, I would do pretty well. I wasn't the best starting out, but I was pretty good, you know. And then, but I would wrestle a lot of tournaments that were just straight weight, so no age. So I was wrestling people that were older than me a lot, and I didn't start, you know, winning those until I was like 7th or 8th grade. That's when I started like doing well, no matter what age group I was in. And then,
And, you know, as you continued having that early success, I mean, you were undefeated in the Ironman, Beast of the East 3 times, the Powerade, and so on. Did you start at an early age to feel the pressure of being better? Not necessarily even the desire to be better, but did you ever start to feel a pressure? You know, as you started, especially I know on the senior level and through college, there was that expectation that you were going to win every match, never lose in your life. I'm curious if you ever felt that pressure, you know, early on, like when that might have started.
I didn't really feel it too much early on because I was always training with people who could beat me. Yeah. So in competition, I was winning, but a lot of practices I was losing. So I didn't have like, I guess I knew I had a sense of reality. I was like, I win a lot in competition wrestling guys in high school, but, you know, I'm losing to the third string guy on a college team. It's like, you know, so I'm not where I'd like to be yet. So I was just still really focused internally on wanting to get better and wanting to be able to wrestle with those guys that I train with and stuff like that.
And I don't even want to get too far into this conversation without asking about your faith. When did your faith start to play a role in your career?
Well, my faith really started when I moved out to the Olympic Training Center my senior year of high school, and I was there with Coach Slay and Coach Zadig and a man named Gene Davis, and they had Bible studies, were very open about their faith, and invited me to church and different stuff like that. So I started going to that each week, and that's when I started to really grow a lot of my faith, and then continued to grow. And I think the Lord was still pulling me in throughout my freshman year of college. And then after faith was a big part of my life, but I wasn't 100% committed at that point. And then after my freshman year, when I lost in the NCAA finals, that's after that match is when I started to really commit to the Lord. I know what commitment is. So commit to the Lord like I know what 100% is.
Yeah.
And that's when my faith started becoming a large part of the way that I wrestle, the way that I think about competition, and not just something to do, but who I am.
And I'm curious because it's so funny to see where and how God ministers to all of us exactly where we are. And, it seems like for you is when you got out to the Olympic Training Center, that's when God really started to speak to you. I'm curious, what led you to the Olympic Training Center? Because that seems like a divine intervention that God kind of set that up to get you out to the Olympic Training Center. So, it sounds like before you went out there, God's kind of knocking on your heart. Then you get out there and it really happens. What led you to wanting to go to the Olympic Training Center your senior year?
Basically wrestling, because I had was traveling all over the state to wrestle with the best guys I could possibly wrestle with. I was going to different colleges to wrestle with college guys during their RTC practice and camps and stuff like that. So, and then I did well at the FILA Juniors my junior year. I made it to the finals of the World Team Trials, and the coaches were looking for guys to come out there and train in this developmental program. And I was like, sounds like a good idea. It was good for me because I was mature enough to where I knew that I wasn't going to make any dumb decisions, and I could be on my own and I would still be focused on the right things. And so my parents went out there with me, and we visited and checked things out. And it made a lot of sense because there was Dustin Kilgore, John Reeder, Jack Jensen, my roommate Garrett Ryan, Brooks Clemens. There was a lot of guys around my weight that I could be pushed with every day. So that's wrestling led me out there. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, for sure. And then what led you to Ohio State?
Same thing. Basically, I was visiting a lot of schools unofficially, and Ohio State's Regional Training Center was the most attractive part of the university to me. I mean, of course, I thought that we could win team titles, and the coaches were like a part of the RTC, so that's obviously really good. And then I think the year that I committed, Ohio RTC had 5 out of the 7 guys on the world team. So, and near my weight, there was Keith Gavin, J.D. Bergman, Nick Heflin, Tervel, Tavanello, Kenny Cords. So there was just a lot of people for me to train with. And I always do best in environments when I have people who are, really like-minded and are going to give 100% in every practice. And that's what it was like. That's what it was when I got there.
And after your freshman year, it was a tight window. If I remember correctly, you lost to Kyvon Gatson in the finals of the NCAAs, and then you went right off and you had a lot of senior level success. At the same time as when you really committed your life to the Lord and really felt that all-in commitment, what changes did you feel after saying, all right, I really got to give God everything? How did that impact your career moving forward?
Yeah, it was only 6 months from the 6 months from being second and then, college wrestling to being the best person in the world. So it's pretty crazy how fast everything changed. And I just felt I was I was really good my freshman year of college, better than I competed. And I was wrestling with Terrell and JD in the practice room and um, doing well with them. Like I wasn't beating them at that point, but we could have like legit matches.
Yeah.
So I knew that and those guys were some of the best guys in the world. So I knew
Right.
like I was good enough to wrestle with those guys, but I just was afraid of losing, and I had too much of who I was wrapped up in whether or not I won or lost wrestling match. And then a lot of that faded away after um, after I committed more to the Lord. So a lot of those like negative feelings and anxiety and all that stuff kind of just faded away. And then, I mean, when I go back and watch my 2015 World Championships, like there's a couple situations in earlier rounds and even in the finals where I'm just like, I mean, God had to have helped me there. Like I was like I should have stepped out, and I like somehow did it, and he did, and it was just like, so I think, I believe God just blessed that, and wanted me to know that he was with me, and he did it through, wrestling. And, so I was just, I think I was more clear-minded and able to compete really with all the gifts that he had given me. I think beforehand, you were just in practice, you would have said, if you saw me in practice, you would have said, "Oh, this guy's one of the best guys in the world." But then you saw me in competition, he's like, this guy's vying for a national title in collegiate wrestling. But, when you take away all the stress and all that stuff that comes with being too wrapped up in yourself, then you can compete better.
And it's funny, whether it's competitions and wrestling or whether it's just life, relationships, business, when you take away the things that God doesn't have for you, it's amazing how much easier everything is. Like we overcomplicate it so much by adding in the stress, the negativity. And, even as a Penn State guy, it was always fun watching you in college because you were always up for a challenge, and big ones at that. I believe your finals in 2018 was like a 60-pound difference, one of the biggest in NCAA wrestling history. I'm curious, what has fueled you to seek out challenges like that?
I don't even really know if I'm seeking the challenge out or if it's just, I'm not afraid of that type of stuff. So,
Yeah.
To be who I'm going to wrestle, it doesn't make an impact on decisions that I'm going to make. It didn't matter to me that Gwiz was in the weight class when I went up to heavyweight my sophomore year. I was focused on just doing what God wanted me to do. And I felt like God wanted me to wrestle heavyweight and come back. So that's what I did. And the challenge, I mean, those are the guys that I want to wrestle. But if they weren't in the way, if they weren't in the weight, or if it was just me, I would have still done it. But it just happened that there's these tough guys in my weight class, and I get to compete against them.
Yeah, and also unique about your college career is winning a World and Olympic Championship. That doesn't happen often where somebody wins it, goes back to college and stuff. And, I've talked to a number of Olympic gold medalists on this podcast, but you're the only one who came back to win an NCAA championship. And I'm curious, a lot of these athletes have that kind of Olympic hangover where you're in the media, you're in the limelight, you're on NBC Today, you're on Good Morning America, you're the pinnacle of the spotlight in the sport. And there's often like a hangover from it, and the attention's gone, the media's gone, everything's gone, and there's kind of a void. And being a Christian, you don't find your worth in that stuff. And I'm curious what it was like for you after winning the Olympics to have that college focus there, where there wasn't as much of a emptiness as a lot of athletes feel because there's something going on right away after that.
Yeah, no, I felt my parents have always been so good to me and so honest with me. And I talk to my dad a lot about different things, and he always, along with my faith, he always keeps me very grounded and focused on the right things, So I was thinking about not coming back to college, and I was talking to my dad, and it was all about money, And he was like, well, I didn't know you wanted to be the richest man in the world. I thought you wanted to be the greatest wrestler in the world. And I was like, oh yeah, that's true. So my dad helps me a lot to stay focused on the right things. And my parents and family and sports system also make it sure I'm making the right decisions in regards to, how many interviews do you need to do, and how many shows do you need to be on, and is it worth it to miss practice for this? So I talk to them a lot about that type of stuff, and we work through those things to just make sure that I'm still focused on what I need to be focused on and what I believe God's made me to do for this time period in my life. And at the end of the day, God made me a competitor and a fighter. And, I believe this is what I was born to do. So when I step on the mat, it's like I'm as hungry as throughout that whole time. I did not look forward to practice. I did not look forward to competition, and I think also a lot of that has to do with the way that I trained. I wasn't overtrained. I felt like I was getting a lot of rest. So I was looking forward to competing and doing the things that I've been working on.
Was winning the Olympics, you've won so many different accolades and titles. Do you think winning the Olympics was the greatest high of your career so far?
The only time I've ever cried after a wrestling match was in 2015. After I won a wrestling match was in 2015. So that was the coolest. That was the coolest thing for me, because
especially being here in the States. I was there in Vegas. Yeah. That was a great time.
Yeah. It was 9/11, and in the United States, wrestling, Gadisov was like pound for pound #1 in the world that year. And he was actually somebody that I looked up to I watched him since I was in middle school, wrestle. Yeah. So I thought he was a beast. And I remember people were congratulating my high school coach, on getting silver before the finals even happened, because this guy was so good. So I was just like, to be able to beat him was crazy. And after making a greater commitment to the Lord and all the training, and losing a wrestling match isn't a big deal to me now. I mean, I don't want to lose. Yeah. And everybody wants to win and stuff like that. But when I lost my freshman year, it was heartbreaking for me. And because I was so wrapped up in, being a 4-time champ and being the greatest ever, and how much it meant to me personally. So then to be able to change a lot of ways that I thought, and to still have success and stuff like that, it was cool.
And you talk about those highs and lows, right? Devastating loss in NCAAs, winning the world championship right here in the U.S. on 9/11. I'm curious how your faith in the Lord has helped you balance those highs and lows. I know you mentioned wins and losses don't define you. And similarly with highs and lows, so many people struggle. I think it's only human nature to struggle with that balance of being on the top of the world, the best of the best, things just happen. And right away, life's got a funny way of humbling you. I'm curious how your faith has helped you kind of navigate through those highs and lows.
Yeah. Well, I just know that the Lord is always with me, whether I'm on the peak of the mountain or I'm in the valley. He's always with me. And even if I don't feel like he's with me, his word tells me he's with me.
Amen.
So I just always remind myself of that. And I believe what the word says more than how I feel or my emotions. And I just take it to heart, and that makes everything much easier in life.
For sure. And when I watch you give interviews like the one after Worlds in 2018, where you mentioned the line about wins and losses not defining you, that was after you lost at Saint-Gilles, and you had such a solid demeanor. And I was really reminded of 1 Timothy 6:6, which says, but godliness with contentment is great gain. And you can tell you have that peace about your competition and about your career. You're not doing it for vainglory. And I think it was almost like in the interviews, they were kind of pressing you for more disappointment. And, as a business owner, I always try to have that balance of hunger for more, but balancing it with that contentment. And I'm curious at how you found that contentment to where, like you said, I don't like winning or I don't like losing, but I also don't, it's not going to define me if I lose. And I'm curious how you balance that hunger for more with having contentment with the outcome, irregardless of that.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it's just about knowing the Lord and doing what he wants me to do. And like, for example, in wrestling, I believe God wants me to compete a specific way, train a specific way, and use the gifts that he's given me with 100% of with 100% effort, so as not so that I can win more wrestling matches, but so that I can know him in a deeper way. And but if I win more wrestling matches, fun. I love competing and stuff like that. And if your business grows, fun.
Yeah,
That's great. But at the same time, like, yeah, business growing or not growing, winning wrestling matches or not winning wrestling matches, it's all in God's hands, and I'm always focused on him no matter what. But I, it does, that doesn't stop me. If you were to see me train and, see me to compete, you would think, well, this guy is really hungry to win.
yeah.
But in my heart, it's not about a hunger to win. It's about knowing the Lord.
Yeah. And, I usually ask a lot of guests how they handle big losses and they fought through adversity, but I don't as often get the opportunity to ask people how they endured so much success. And putting aside the pride and humility, like we're biblically called to do, you've seemed, on the surface at least, to navigate those wins and losses well. And I'm curious what advice you'd have for the young competitors now who you see these kids competing year round. They're on Instagram, they're on Twitter, they're looking at every ranking, they're trying to win everything. There's a lot of pressure on them. I'm curious what advice you'd have if there's younger listeners right now who are starting that period in their life where they're having a lot of success and they want to be where you are, where David is and Jordan are. What advice you might have for them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't look at I don't look at rankings at all. I don't look at social media at all. I don't care about what other people say about me and my wrestling. So I think those things right there can help a young athlete. I think that social media is can be very negative for the most part for a lot of people, especially athletes, because you can find negative things about yourself, and you know it's just not good for you. So I felt I feel better not being on social media, and I actually feel more motivated to do the things that really matter to me, which growing in my faith and wrestling and all that all that stuff. So those are some of the things that I would tell the younger kids. And then of course it's like you got to know who you are. If you know who you are and you're solid in that, then it doesn't really matter what happens to you, because we're children of the Most High God, and that's what is the most firm thing in my heart. So winning and losing a wrestling match or what people say or any of that stuff doesn't affect that, because our Father is the only voice that matters to us. So that's what I would tell kids. You gotta study the Bible and fellowship with other Christians and figure out who you are, and then everything else is. I mean, we're gonna go through difficulties and stuff like that, but we can be at peace even in that.
And do you bounce back quickly after certain defeats? I remember you tweeting about beating Penn State in the duel or stuff about, what said you live and going back and forth and all these things. And so many times you see the success of that, and other times there's the failure in that, but you don't seem to be moved. What is your perspective when you endure hardship or you endure that disappointment?
Well, I'm always thinking, what is God teaching me in this? That's one of the first questions I ask myself.
Yeah.
I know everything's spiritual. So losing a wrestling match to me isn't just, well, the guy was better than me. There's more to it. There's something that God wants me to learn from it. Sometimes he reveals it to me, sometimes he doesn't, but it's a good perspective either way to have, because you want to be listening to what God has to say. And then, when I start with that, everything else just kind of falls in line. And um, Coach Coach Kale said this the other day. He said like after winning the Olympics, or he said before winning the Olympics, he was like, carry sticks, get water. And then after winning the Olympics, carry sticks, get water. It's like, you're just the same. You know what I mean? It's like, it's no big deal. In success and defeat, it's like, you just know who you are and continue to be motivated to grow closer to the Lord.
And is that at this point what your motivation is, to continue to win more gold? In my head, I always try to think as I'm doing a podcast, what I would caption it sometimes to really minister and reach people. And I feel like the perfect title for this episode is Your Quest for More, and then in parentheses, than gold. You still want more gold, but you're on a quest for more than that. And I'm curious what continues to motivate you to, you've won every accolade. You've got them all, right? At this point, what continues to motivate you for more?
It's interesting because I feel more motivated in my life right now in regards to the wrestling than ever before.
That's scary.
Yeah.
5 other people in the world right now, I'm on notice.
Yeah. So I don't really, other than it being from God working within me, I don't really know why. Like you said, I could be satisfied with what I've done, but in me, I am not satisfied at all. And if I were to stop wrestling, then very quickly I could change and be like, it's all good. This is what God wanted for me. But in my heart right now, I just have this burning desire to wrestle the way that He wants me to, and I just want to destroy everybody that I wrestle, and I know that He's put it in me to do it. So I'm very motivated right now.
Yeah, and last year you made a move that's kind of in line with that, wanting to continue to get better. You made a move over to the NLWC, and I can't imagine how hard that was. Penn State, a rival school in college, and, going back again, tweeting out, I want to beat Penn State, and then kind of humbling yourself to right now, this is the best thing for me. What went into that move to the NLWC, and how do you think it's been going over this past year?
Yeah, it was a long process in regards to, what went into it. And I think slowly God was showing me and my wife that this is the best thing for us and for both of us. So, the simple answer is I believe that God wanted me to move here. So wanted us to move here, me and my wife, Maddie. So that's what we did. But, there was just a lot of different things that went into it. And you just look at them all and see what God's trying to show you. And the move has been great. We just now got into our house a couple weeks ago.
Congrats.
Here, so thanks. Yeah, so that's been cool being able to settle down here. My wife got into medical school at Penn State, so she's going to school a mile from where we train. So that's pretty awesome. And that was a big part of we were, Lord willing, hoping that she would get into school, and that she did. So that's been really cool. And then technically and mentally and all of that has just been really good since I've been here. I remember when I came out here to talk to the coaches, it's funny. One of the things that Coach Cody said, he was like, I really think that Kale can help you mentally. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, mentally, I need technical work, man. I feel mentally that's where my strong suit is. But Kale really has helped me mentally, and just thinking about things a little differently, and it's been good, and it's all in line with how God wants us to think, and so everything's been really good.
Yeah, Cal was on here a few weeks ago in a rare interview, and he mentioned that you're one of few guys that really want to continue to get better and continue to improve. And, he mentioned that's the reason going to senior nationals, wanting to get better. Is that something with coming here has kind of reignited that fuel to constantly want to get better? And as you have these coaches and Cody and Casey and Cal, is it that itch even more to compete and to get better and say, I want to try this? Like, you can kind of see, I'm not the most technical fan, but I can see you trying new stuff when you go to a tournament, and it's refreshing. There's a lot of guys who just kind of plateau. They train to win. They don't train to get better. And I'm curious if that's something that's been kind of paying off since your move to NWC.
Yeah, for sure. I've I've learned a lot of new things, and I know that I need to compete if I'm going to put them in practice in the times that matter most. And this year it's 2 tournaments that really everyone's thinking about: the Olympic trials and the Olympic Games. So that's what my schedule's based around. So I want to wrestle in as many tournaments that make sense for me to be able to use the things that I've been working on in practice and execute them against live competition, people that are really fighting and stuff like that. So yeah, we've been working on a lot of stuff, so it's been good.
And everybody got kind of nervous when you had that injury. I do want to ask you, how are you doing since senior nationals?
I'm doing good. Everything's good. No problem.
That's awesome. And, speaking of the NLWC, another big brand and partner you've been involved with is Rudis for quite some time. And, I think there's a lot of people that look up to you from a brand standpoint. You put out a lot of great content. I was going through Instagram yesterday, and sound was on of the video you posted working out, and my wife was in the room. She goes, "Is that a dog?" I'm like, "No, it's just Kyle grunting through his workouts." You got great content. You've got 269,000 followers on Instagram, and you seem to have a good perspective as I talk to you about not getting caught up in what others say and think about you. And similarly, advice for enduring success. I'm curious your perspective on giving place to your brand, not completely ignoring it, but not getting lost in it.
Yeah, well, I think Rudis is really my biggest ally in regards to building a brand and making sure that type of stuff is taking control. It's like Rudis wants me to win wrestling matches, and I want to win wrestling matches, and in the process of doing that, they're a lot smarter at marketing, and they're a lot better than I am at that type of stuff. So they will, strategically plan out all the different things to make sure that it's benefiting both of us. So that's the way that we think about it. And yeah, I mean, I'm the wrestler. That's who I am. They're the people that take care of all that other stuff.
So it sounds like what you're saying in one way is to trust those around you to help you where you might not excel, right? You're not a guy who wants to sit there thinking about every caption, thinking about this. So you have to trust those people around you to help you and not do everything yourself. So, it is getting easier and easier to make content and post it, but it seems like you've got that good balance. So I'm assuming you don't go into social media too much to read what people are saying. You're trying to keep your head as clear as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I was watching this one Khabib interview, and they were talking to him about different things, and they were like, "What's your favorite movie?" He was like, "I don't watch movies; they make me soft." And I was thinking about social media too. I think that anytime, like when I see somebody, opponent or somebody say something and it makes me mad, it's like that's just wasted energy. Why am I looking at that? Instead, let me use that energy on them when we compete. So the first time that I want to see them, and the first time that I want to put any energy into them, is when we step onto the mat and compete.
Yeah,
That's what I think about.
And especially now when, last year Jaden Cox announced he's coming up to 97 kilos. And I'm curious your perspective on that. And also, I'm assuming your perspective on the social side is to just ignore it, and I'll see you on the mat in April.
Yeah. Yep. See him hopefully before April.
Yeah.
I'd like to wrestle him before April. But Jaden is a good friend of mine, so It's like I love the guy. Been around him for since we were sophomores in high school, and he's a Christian as well, so he's my brother. But in regards to wrestling, we'll settle it on the date that we wrestle.
And from a standpoint of getting ready for the Olympics, you know, if wrestling is such a timing sport, are you as confident now as you've ever been? You tell me you're as hungry as you've ever been. You're as motivated as you've ever been. And I'm curious if that confidence level is right there too right now.
Yeah. I mean, I get more and more confident because I am very diligent in tracking the way that I feel leading up to tournaments and the way that I feel when I train and the correct way to peak, and not just the way that I feel, but looking at scientifically the numbers and having people, look at the different, just examine my recovery and stuff like that. So when you have all that data, you can really put together very strong schedules for your most important events, so that you know that you're going to feel the best and that you're actually, physically going to be at your very best for that event. So I'm confident in those things. And it's not just going to be, even the best athletes in the world, I think, they don't really know for sure if they're actually going to be at their best. Sometimes they are, and still the best guys, you watch that documentary, The Last Dance, Michael Jordan's eating pizza, smoking cigars and drinking beer, before he goes out and lights it up with 55 points. So it's like, sometimes that you can have that approach, but I have the approach where I want to be as perfect as I can be. So I take everything very seriously.
I love it, man. Well, listen, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I appreciate you making some time today to come on the podcast. Any last words you have? If not, we'll see you on the mat soon.
Yeah, no, that's it. Thank you. Appreciate it, man.
Awesome, man. We'll chat soon.
Cool.
See ya. And that is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. If you did enjoy this episode of the podcast, be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on more episodes. For more wrestling content, be sure to follow Bashmania on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and follow me. I'm at JBash on Instagram and at JustinJBash on Twitter. I'll be back with another episode shortly. See ya.
And the beat goes on.